Hello. Today's episode number 47 of the Professor Slots podcast discusses big slots jackpots and having a plan in case you win. Plus, in this episode, I'll be covering the current state of slot machine casino gambling in the great U.S. states of Kansas and Kentucky. Thank you for joining me for the Professor Slots podcast show. I'm John Friedel, and this is a podcast about slot machine casino gambling. It is where I provide knowledge, insights, and tools for helping you improve your slot machine gambling performance.
John Friedel from the Professor Slots blog reveals all his tips and tricks for thriving in the casino environment. Choose winning slot machines and identify your gambling goals. Being entertained, earning comps, winning take-home cash, or combining them.
In case you missed it, on my last episode, I went over American Casino Guide's interview with Slots King Peter Liston. As I mentioned last time, these podcast episodes now come with additional commentary not found anywhere else because, well, you're special and I like you best. Don't tell my readers or YouTube viewers I said that. Further, I reviewed Indiana and Iowa slot machine casino gambling 2018 on my last episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to my last episode as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Let's start with the first episode of the show. What if you win the $60,000 slot machine jackpot? Are you ready? Are you ready to win a $60,000 slot machine jackpot? Are you sure? From making the bet to income tax preparation, I'll go over everything you'll need to do. One of my biggest issues with slot machine casino gambling has been the surprises, like winning an unexpectedly large jackpot. Of course, it's possible to win big jackpots. We all know that's possible, so why not be ready? This segment has the following sections. 1. An introduction. 2. What it's like to win big. 3. How to be ready, just in case. 4. Choices. Handling the hand pay. 5. What comes afterward. 6. Preparing for income taxes. And 7. A summary. I've won 90 taxable jackpots in 9 months in a U.S. state where slot machine jackpots become taxable at $1,200. Of those, 3 exceeded $10,000. On average, 1 in 30 jackpots exceeded $1,000, at least for me. This excludes the $40,000 cash option I got for winning a car at the end of those 9 months. My first big jackpot was for $27,000. So far, this is my largest jackpot won playing slot machines. I won it early on Saturday, December 21st, 2013, at 5:40 a.m. at Horseshoe Cincinnati, since purchased and renamed Jack Casino Cincinnati. I won this $27,000 hand pay on a blue-red-white sevens slot machine in the high-limit slots room. I'd made the maximum bet on this $10 denomination 2-credit slot machine. I was checking to see if I could cycle my bankroll on the slot machine. I was testing to see if it was a winning slot machine. I just about decided I was wasting my money because it wasn't showing any evidence of bankroll cycling when it hit. I remember the moment clearly. It was very early in the morning. I started my session at 4 a.m., this is a test period I was going through at the time, and had already won a small hand pay. I remember seeing someone win their own hand pay behind me, but couldn't see how much. A floor manager was there with a slot attendant during their hand pay, so it must have been over $10,000. As the floor manager and slot attendant walked away after this hand pay, they began walking towards me. Let me jump in here and say my testing of going to the casino at 4 a.m. to see if there was a different odds of winning on that particular day did turn out to be quite successful, not only for myself, but for the person behind me who also got a large hand pay. In any case, just as they approached, my $27,000 jackpot hit. I looked down, saw the $2,700 credit hit, looked up at the floor manager looking at me as he was about to walk by, and swore. That was embarrassing. I don't usually swear, but at that moment I felt the need to do so. I swore right while looking the floor manager in the eye. He kept walking, now with a frown. I called out to him to explain. "Excuse me, sorry about that. I didn't mean to swear, but I just won a jackpot, a really big jackpot." And they came back. Right about then, 30 seconds after the slot machine hit, I basically went into shock. Since I'd started gambling again after nearly 10 years, my biggest jackpot had been $5,000. I'd won that amount 3 times over the last month since I'd started gambling again, and every time was hard on me. But now I'd won more than 5 times that. It wasn't easy. I remember telling the floor manager how unreal and dreamlike it felt. I even asked the slot attendant to pinch me. And after the hand pay, I had trouble deciding what to do next. Should I just go on with my day? Should I stick to the plan I had had in mind? Or was my plan of gambling all day ruined? Hint, you're done. Go home. Can you imagine how I was feeling? I know some of you can indeed imagine it. I know because some of you have won even larger jackpots while playing slots. Are you ready to win a big jackpot the next time you play a slot machine? To be ready, you'll need some essentials like your government-issued ID. But there are other ways you'll probably want to be ready. You'll need the government-issued ID to receive a taxable jackpot at a casino. That's essential. If you don't have it with you, nice casinos will let you go to your car for it. But I don't think you should count on the casino letting you go home for it. If you're anything like me, you might find yourself not quite yourself after winning a big jackpot. To be ready, think it through in advance. Make yourself a plan. Then, when it happens, all you need to do is remember the plan. It doesn't have to be a complicated plan. Just ask yourself this simple question. After you get the hand pay, will you stay or will you go? There will be more decisions to make, but that's really the most important one. As I tell my students, which as it happens I did again earlier this week, I don't care what your plan is. I care that you have a plan. We're not having a career discussion right now, but I think you get the point. Will you leave the casino or will you make a night of it? Personally, I'd leave. I'd leave as soon as I could. I didn't know that in advance of my biggest jackpot, but I do now. That's my plan. What's yours? So imagine you've won your biggest jackpot ever, and you have your ID. You might even have a Players Club card so your personal information is on file with the casino. Next up is the hand pay and more decisions. If you've never won a taxable jackpot before, no matter what size, the hand pay process is relatively straightforward. You win a jackpot. The machine locks up. A slot attendant comes. You do paperwork. Someone else shows up to verify the jackpot. Finally, you get paid. As it happens, I've already explained the hand pay process when winning a taxable jackpot playing slots. That's gone over in my podcast episode number 7, How Do Slot Machines Pay Out? California Slots 2017. But there are some slight changes to this process when winning big jackpots. In most states, jackpots of $10,000 or more require that the jackpot verifier is a floor manager rather than another slot attendant. Tip number 1. You can tip the slot attendant, and in my opinion should, but you can't tip the floor manager. If they say it's okay, the floor manager will take a tip to put into the group tip jar for all the slot attendants. But typically, floor managers can't receive tips. Tip number 2. This is your chance to meet a floor manager. It's a priceless opportunity. Get to know them. Make friends if you can. Floor managers know a lot more about what's going on at a casino than slot attendants. Ask questions. Be nice. Thank me later. You do have another choice to make, however. For jackpots just over the taxable limit, but under $10,000, casinos will provide banded stacks of $5,000 when you ask for cash instead of a check. Other casinos only provide banded stacks of $10,000 each. Either way, for a large jackpot where you ask for cash, you can expect banded stacks, sometimes called bricks, of $100 bills. Personally, I have found it's nice when a slot attendant counts out $100 bills in my hand. Professionally, I advise you to take most or all the jackpot as a check. That is, if your plan includes requesting some or all of your taxable jackpot in cash. It's really your choice, however. What's your plan again? If you do request cash and end up leaving the casino without spending it, I should mention what happens at the bank when you go to deposit $10,000 or more in cash. It's just the same as any other cash deposit, except for the Currency Transaction Report, CTR. The CTR is a reporting requirement for U.S. financial institutions regarding all cash deposits, withdrawals, and currency exchanges of $10,000 or more. When making a deposit of at least $10,000 in cash, it will be reported to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, within the U.S. Treasury Department. FinCEN was created in 1990 and became its own bureau under the USA Patriot Act, passed in 2002. In part, it monitors and analyzes financial transactions for illegal transactions. This includes financial crimes related to money laundering and corruption. Over recent years, I've deposited more than $10,000 multiple times at my bank and never had a concern. They do ask where the money came from, to which I typically respond, I won it at the casino. I don't think you have any cause for concern, as earning money at a casino isn't an illegal transaction. My lack of concern here hinges on understanding that big jackpots generate a W-2G tax form when you win them at a casino. So if FinCEN does get interested, it wouldn't take much for the U.S. Treasury to confirm the source of that much cash. Nevertheless, I thought you should know about the CTR. There is another aspect to accepting a lot of cash you should probably be aware of. In my mind, it's slightly more important than the CTR. It's this. How much cash can you carry? Let's say you're wearing a pair of jeans or trousers with typical size pockets. Let's further say you're not wearing a jacket or carrying any sort of purse. Finally, let's assume all your cash is in $100 bills. Under those circumstances, how much cash can you carry without it being in your hand or sticking out somewhere for anyone to notice? With a wallet in one pocket and a mobile phone in another, I've been able to tuck away 200 $100 bills. That's only $20,000 in all pockets of a typical pair of men's jeans. Let's say you won a big jackpot, which you accepted as cash and after taxes have $50,000 in $100 bills in your hand. What do you do with it? Yes, you can fill all your pockets with $20,000 of it. What about the remainder? Do you ask the casino to provide a brown paper bag, perhaps? I've been in this situation and faced this dilemma. Once again, make sure you have a plan in case you win. One final note about getting home. Feel free to ask the casino for security to walk you to your car. They're perfectly happy to do so. Unlike me, try to remember where you parked your car. Take it from me, it can be surprisingly hard to remember that little fact when you're clutching tens of thousands of dollars in your sweaty hands. One time I was sitting 2 seats away from someone who looked like they had never been in a high-limit slots room at a casino. Do you know that look? Anyway, they looked both nervous and like they wanted to go. Suddenly, and it's always sudden, they won a $4,800 jackpot. They just nodded to themselves and started hitting the cash-out button as they stood up and began to walk away, which, naturally enough, wasn't working because the slot machine had locked up due to winning a taxable jackpot. When the cash-out button wouldn't work, they turned and looked at me with a question in their eyes. This is where I walked right into trouble. I said, "Oh, the machine locked up because you won a big jackpot. Don't worry, the slot attendant should be here any moment to help you with getting it as well as paying taxes." I was just trying to be helpful. I imagine you know what happened next. Taxes? Taxes? As they became more and more upset at me, I tried to disengage from the conversation. Luckily for me, the slot attendant arrived right about then to save me. Slot attendants are great. Seriously. I always remember how upset this taxable jackpot winner was whenever I work with a slot attendant. It is what I remember whenever I tip my slot attendant after winning my own taxable jackpots. So when you win a taxable jackpot, you'll be working with a slot attendant. I've already described what that is like, but let's discuss income taxes for a moment. Just the other day, a follower on my Professor Slots Twitter account, @ProfessorSlots, said, "The amount of the taxable jackpot needs to be raised." My response was, "Why? It's still taxable even if you don't get a W-2G hand pay." But I do appreciate the sentiment. I really do. If you win $10 at a casino, it's taxable income. This gets confusing fast, though, because what if you spend that $10 in the next few minutes without it ever leaving the slot machine? I'm going to avoid answering that as it really deserves its own discussion someday. What isn't in dispute is what happens when the casino issues a W-2G income tax form reported directly to the IRS. If you choose to accept a taxable jackpot, then you will receive a W-2G. As an aside, some people can't afford or otherwise don't want taxable jackpots. For instance, my family friends Lois and Dave, in my podcast episode number 27, Seminole Brighton Casino, Minnesota Slots 2018, are from Canada. For them, any gambling income from their annual visits to U.S. casinos is foreign income and potentially subject to taxation by the Canadian government. Yikes. Apparently, as usual with income taxes, what to do is very individualized. My admittedly limited understanding is, and please don't consider me any kind of professional or expert with regards to international tax law, my Canadian friends can earn some income while gambling in the U.S., but not a lot of income. A $60,000 taxable jackpot may well be too much, too difficult, and therefore unwanted. Maybe. For them, or for you if you decide to gamble in Canada, I would suggest you find out what the limit would be that you could accept given your circumstances. But that's only if you gamble internationally. You can always choose not to accept a taxable jackpot. You can choose to walk away. An old slots joke is this: the only way to legally avoid paying taxes after winning a jackpot of $1,200 or more is simply to not accept the winnings. That's funny, yes? It's funny but true. Also, be aware the taxable limit is instead $600 in some states like Massachusetts, at least for the moment. By that I mean, at the moment, it's just Massachusetts. Later, it could be more states, and I'll discuss that in a moment. Finally, there are the tax choices you need to make when filling out the paperwork for the taxable jackpot with the slot attendant. 1. A federal income tax withdrawal from your winnings is typically optional. 2. State income tax withdrawal is very state-dependent. 3. Local income tax withdrawal exists if the casino you are at is located within a city's limits. 4. Other withdrawals may exist, such as a non-refundable 3% tax on jackpots over $1,200 in Mississippi, as imposed by the Mississippi Gaming Commission. For details on this, see my article for Mississippi slot machine casino gambling at professorslots.com/ms. If you keep good gambling records, it usually works out well to choose to not pay federal taxes. Why? Because keeping good gambling records means you will have gambling deductions to apply during your annual income tax preparations. If you don't keep good gambling records, then frankly, you should start doing so. To help get started, see my podcast episode number 28, Gambling Record Keeping and Mississippi Slots 2018. The danger of not keeping gambling records is having to pay income taxes when avoiding them or getting a refund later was entirely possible. Keep gambling records just in case you win a big jackpot. Make it part of your plan, okay? I've mentioned something similar to this next point before, back in episode number 30, Winning Small at Foxwoods and Montana Slots 2018, that a lot of table and card game players don't have much of a clue about taxable jackpots. In fact, they are wary and perhaps a bit scared of them. I suppose it's due to the mystery involved. Apparently, it is possible for blackjack, craps, and poker players to win them, but it's so rare. I could hardly believe my eyes when I saw the extreme reluctance of around 50 table game players not wanting to volunteer to accept any W2Gs at Eric Rosenthal's High Limit Slot Pull event during last year's Gamblepalooza, hosted by Vito from Cousin Vito's Casino Podcast. My puzzlement led to a conversation at a craps table with Mark Duvall and Dr. Mike, hosts of the You Can Bet on That entertainment gambling podcast. While they played, Mark explained why it was so rare for table game players to earn a taxable jackpot. Basically, and my apologies to Mark if I'm skipping some of his wonderful details of the games, most individual bets at these games don't lead to a high enough win to be taxable. There are some, and it can happen, but not nearly as often as I thought. Frankly, again, it's rare. I suppose that might explain why that individual on Twitter felt so strongly about raising the taxable limit, if that person was gambling in Massachusetts. I don't know that they were, but it would explain why they felt that way. In Massachusetts, at least, the taxable limit for a jackpot is $600 or more, not like most states with a taxable jackpot limit of $1,200 or more. I can imagine that there are quite a few more ways to win in table games where a player might win a $600 jackpot from an individual bet. And the state would then get income taxes automatically through the W2G IRS form, when I suspect players might not voluntarily report them on their annual income tax filings. We'll call that a reasonable guess, shall we? My first point here is you shouldn't expect your table game friends to be much help with what to do with taxable jackpots from playing slots. That's more our problem than theirs, at least until more states reduce the taxable limit to $600. Even then, we'll probably still have oodles more of them even with a lower limit. So again, taxable jackpots are not unique to slots players, but they might as well be. I doubt states will wait many more years before lowering the taxable limit to $600. Why? Because of the severe budget difficulties I've heard about for some states. So even if you don't win taxable jackpots now by playing slots, you're at the forefront of those who will in not too many more years. My final point here is, when you look at the problem in a certain light, it's not much of a problem at all. Not really. All you need to do to make it a non-issue would be to start keeping gambling records. That's it. No more problem. The difficulty comes from the fact that changing habits is hard work. If your habit is to not keep even basic gambling records, then you should seriously consider changing that habit. This is for two solid reasons. First, you'll probably be doing yourself a favor for later if the taxable limit drops to $600. Think about it. How many times in a year do you win a $600 or greater jackpot? Now, imagine all those W-2G income tax forms. You'd want all those federal and state income taxes back in a refund, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Second, it doesn't really matter if the taxable limit drops from $1,200 to $600. Why? Because it's my job to make you a winner, and I take my job very seriously. You're likely listening to this podcast because you have a slots gambling goal I can help you improve at, and I believe I will. The real question here is, do you? Do you realize that to plan for the future, you're going to have to adjust to winning more? And that means planning for taxable jackpots, one way or another. Should I apologize here about having to pay taxes? I think not. I didn't invent them after all. Death and taxes, right? Right. I'm just explaining how to minimize their negative impact on your financial life. In summary, a few weeks ago, a fan of my website and podcast named Richard from Gainesville, Georgia, contacted me via Twitter after he won $60,000 playing slots. I was proud of how well he handled it and told him so. How he handled a big jackpot reminded me of what it was like. My first time, I didn't do as well as Richard. So I'm discussing this so you can do better than I did, and perhaps as well as Richard did, if you won a large taxable jackpot. Basically, you need a plan in case you win a taxable jackpot. Here are a few things we've considered in which you'll need to decide for yourself, preferably before winning a big taxable jackpot. 1. What will you do immediately after a winning jackpot? Choosing to leave or stay is the biggest decision here. 2. Cash or check or both. If cash, consider how little you can carry in your pockets. 3. Paying income taxes. Federal, state, local, and more are all possible. Or there may be none. Mostly, it depends on your state. And 4. Keeping good gambling records to potentially get income tax refunds. Or, without gambling records, not getting any of it back. Choose now. Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Up next is the second segment of the show on slot machine casino gambling. Here, I provide a brief overview of the current state of gambling in 2 U.S. states, territories, or the federal district, emphasizing, by far, anything of interest to slot machine casino gamblers. Up first is Kansas Slot Machine Casino Gambling 2018. Here goes. Kansas Slot Machine Casino Gambling consists of 4 state-run commercial casinos and 5 American Indian tribal casinos. A potential 10th casino with parimutuel betting and slot machines, a racino, is still under review by the state legislature. Minimum theoretical payout return percentages are known to have been established for all non-tribal casinos, as well as all but one tribal casino. Actual payout return statistics from any, however, are not made available to the public. The minimum legal gambling age in Kansas depends upon the gambling activity. For land-based casinos and poker rooms, it's 21. For bingo, the lottery, and parimutuel wagering, it's 18. The Kansas legislature approved charitable and social gaming in 1974, followed in 1978 by both parimutuel racetracks and a state lottery. All state licenses for parimutuel facilities in Kansas have since lapsed or been revoked. None have been open since 2008. In 1995, negotiations led to a state tribal compact for the establishment of 4 American Indian tribal casinos. This quickly led to the state granting licensing for 4 non-tribal casinos. Here's another interesting tension between tribal and non-tribal casinos. that Kansas would quickly allow non-tribal casinos via state regulations so soon after receiving approval from the government for negotiated tribal-state compacts seems more than coincidental. If nothing else, it's a clear business decision by the state. Like any market, be it soap or cars, there are only so many customers interested in this. And when moving from not having a market to having a market, it's a commonly held belief that it's far easier for a consumer to make their choice than it is to change their choice later. So if the state wants its economy to benefit from a gaming industry opening up in Kansas, then they better well establish their own casinos earlier rather than later. That's simple business principles. That's simply survival. What gets me thinking, especially after my comments in my last episode about the gaming market tension between Indiana and Illinois, is how often does this sort of thing happen anyway? You can bet I will be considering any potential gaming market strategies which the other U.S. states and even territories might be engaged in, right? Just consider Caesars Windsor across the Canadian border from the Detroit casinos. And what about the gaming market relationship between the U.S. territory of American Samoa and the nearby independent nation of Western Samoa? Okay, so maybe those examples aren't immediately useful to you. Maybe, but maybe not. Remember, I get basic information on download statistics for my podcast episodes, and, well, I can't seem to find any downloads from the South Pacific. Oh well. Actually, I'm going to jump in here and say I just checked a few minutes ago, and I did have one from the South Pacific. But my mind senses a pattern. When I look at Utah slot machine casino gambling, there isn't any. Yet directly west of Salt Lake City on the Utah-Nevada border is the town of West Wendover. The casinos there are part of this. It's part of a smart business plan. That's not even the only state border where Nevada does that. I see now that the same is true for so many other states. The new casino in Springfield, Mass. Was prepared for in advance by the Connecticut tribal casinos in 2 or 3 different ways. Did it help Connecticut casinos to build customer loyalty for a year before the nearby Massachusetts casino opened? You bet it did. It's simple business. If you visited my homepage at ProfessorSlots.com, then you may have watched my video there. In it, I talk about having 8 college degrees, mostly in physics and engineering. And one of those degrees is basically an MBA. Officially, it's a Master's of Science in Engineering Management, but it's like an MBA for engineers. Anyway, I need to use that business degree more. And I will. As I proceed through this second time through the U.S. states, territories, and the federal district, I'll watch out more often for this business competition between states and territories. As I do that, as usual, I'll point out anything that seems like it might be useful to finding an edge to improving your slot machine gambling performance. I further imagine I'll need to make that topic its own section in those articles. Not for the second series of the online resource, which I'm about halfway through on my website, but rather in the next series when I restart it again in about 6 months. What say you? Does that sound good? Next up is a usually short statement about slot machine private ownership, which I have included in case you live in this U.S. state and are considering owning a slot machine. Here it is. In Kansas, it is legal to privately own a slot machine if it was manufactured before 1950. The Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission, KRGC, is the regulatory agency for commercial, that is to say non-tribal, gaming in Kansas. While they are also responsible for pari-mutuel betting, no such facilities have been opened since August 2008. As a result, the primary responsibilities of the KRGC center around the 4 state-run casinos in Kansas. The KRGC states that they have monthly revenue reports publicly available for these casinos. However, these so-called unaudited reports do not show revenues, but rather casino profits from electronic gaming machines from each casino. Specifically, these monthly financial reports do not show how much was won by players. Rather, they only report the net amount held by a casino after those winnings were returned. So these reports show the casino's profit from electronic gaming machines and not the revenue. As a consequence, not knowing the amount returned to casino patrons as winnings means it is not possible to calculate payout return statistics for these casinos. The Kansas State Gaming Agency is a separate agency which helps regulate tribal gaming operations for the state of Kansas. Specifically, it enforces the tribal state gaming compacts through the Tribal Gaming Oversight Act. Each American Indian tribe in Kansas with a negotiated and approved tribal state gaming compact also has a tribal gaming commission. Each of these tribal gaming commissions also helps regulate tribal gaming operations at a single tribal casino. These are 1. Iowa Tribe Gaming Commission, 2. Kickapoo Tribe Gaming Commission, 3. Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation Gaming Commission, and 4. Sac and Fox Nation Gaming Commission. My apologies for what is no doubt my terrible pronunciation of tribal names. I grew up in mid-Michigan. You know, not far from Tittabawassee Road in Shiawassee Township in Saginaw County. Don't even get me started on my vacation spots in Manistee, Kalamazoo, and my favorite of Fort Michilimackinac. One of the 3 tribal languages in Michigan is Potawatomi, which might explain why that one I don't typically stumble over. Anyway, I mention this because of my mispronunciation of one of the American Indian tribes in Colorado, which I have consistently been calling the Ute Mountain Tribe. In fact, all this time I should have been saying Ute Mountain Tribe. You know, like the U in Utah. There's no good excuse, of course. I do have a poor excuse, however. Do you want to hear it? I'll take your silence as permission. Thanks. Pardon my sense of humor. When I was in graduate school, I got involved with the largest social club at Iowa State University. Call it a drinking club with a martial arts problem. It was a lot of fun, with a lot of hard work thrown in, sometimes literally, and included quite a few fellow graduate students. 2 of them were Anders and Uta from the Netherlands, not Anders and Utah. And that, my friends, is my flimsy excuse for my regrettable mispronunciation of the Ute Mountain Tribe. In this section, I'll discuss Kansas gambling establishments. As usual, when there are too many casinos to mention here, a complete list along with links to the website, assuming they have set one up, is available on my website blog article for this state at professorslots.com/ks. There are 4 non-tribal casinos and 5 American Indian tribal casinos in Kansas. The largest casino in Kansas is the Kansas Star Casino in Mulvane, having 1,850 gaming machines and 50 table games. The Woodlands is a former pari-mutuel facility with a long and troubled history, first as a Greyhound racetrack starting in 1989, later as a horse racing track, before finally closing in 2008. This currently proposed casino is expected to have up to 3,000 gaming machines. If it were to open, it would become the largest casino in Kansas. Kansas's 4 state-run commercial non-tribal casinos are available on my website blog article for this state at professorslots.com/ks. All 4 American Indian tribes in Kansas have been federally recognized. Further, each has negotiated tribal state compacts subsequently approved by the U.S. Department of Interior. These compacts with the tribes of Kansas are publicly available from the Kansas State Gaming Agency. Each of these tribes owns and operates a tribal casino in Kansas. Further, another tribal casino in Kansas is owned and operated by the Wyandotte Nation, a federally recognized tribe in nearby Oklahoma. After more than a decade of litigation, in 2008, the Wyandotte Nation successfully opened a casino in downtown Kansas City, Kansas. Instead of just listing them off here, the 5 American Indian tribal casinos in Kansas are, again, available on my website blog article for this state at professorslots.com/ks. As an alternative to enjoying Kansas slot machine casino gambling, consider exploring casino options in a nearby state. Kansas is bordered by, to the north, Nebraska, to the east, Missouri, to the south, Oklahoma, and to the west, Colorado. To see any of my articles on these U.S. states, simply visit professorslots.com followed by its 2-letter designation. For example, my Nebraska slots article is available at professorslots.com/ne. The minimum theoretical payout return percentage for state-run commercial casinos per state of Kansas gaming regulations is not legally allowed to be less than 87%. The minimum theoretical payout return percentage for tribal casinos per tribal state gaming compacts between the tribes of Kansas and the state of Kansas is 80%. This 80% payout return limit for tribal casinos in Kansas was confirmed by review of the Electronic Gaming Devices Technical Standards documents associated with each tribal state gaming compact in the Software Requirements for Percentage Payouts subsection. Just to jump in here for a moment with more commentary, I am relying less and less on the annual issue of the American Casino Guide. That's not surprising to me, anyway. It may be to others, but I was taught to think for myself. I remember my complex variable professor Harry D'Souza expressing his frustration with his math class I was in by spontaneously saying, "None of you, except for Charles, could think your way out of a paper bag. In case you didn't notice, my name is John, not Charles. Charles is doing well, by the way. He got his physics PhD from Stanford University and had an article on the cover of Nature magazine, as a graduate student, no less. These days, he runs his father's research company. We're friends on Facebook. My point is, I think for myself. I didn't always, and I may have taken most or all of my 8 college degrees to make that change in myself, but however it happened, it did. I made it happen. So when a book like The American Casino Guide says there are no theoretical payout returns for tribal casinos in Kansas, I check anyway. I check even if I have to skim read hundreds of pages of tribal state compacts. Why? Because you deserve to know where you can find an advantage. You deserve to know. Further, in fact, if I may offer my opinion for your consideration, please think nothing of it. After all, isn't that how it should be? Really, this isn't a tangent or diversion. Not at all. Why? Because one day, not that long ago, I walked into a casino. I walked into a casino, lifted my head up where nobody said I could, and I started thinking about how to win. And not so many years later, here I am talking to you about my thoughts about all the many ways, here and there, you might improve your slots gambling experiences. See how that works? As an actual aside, have I told you how much I like 5-year and 10-year plans? Okay, that's enough commentary for now. Interestingly, the theoretical payout return for the tribal casino in Kansas City is unclear. This 7th Street Casino and Resort in Kansas City is owned and operated by the Wyandotte Nation. This tribe is not a tribe of Kansas. Rather, they are from Oklahoma, with whom they have negotiated a tribal state compact. They have no such compact in place with Kansas. Furthermore, the Wyandotte Nation's compact with Oklahoma does not set payout return limits. It is perhaps possible that a payout return limit was legally set during their decade of litigation to get approved to open their tribal casino in Kansas. If so, my research has yet to uncover it. Actual payout return statistics are not publicly available from either the state-run commercial casinos nor the tribal casinos. In summary, Kansas slot machine casino gambling consists of 4 state-run commercial casinos and 5 American Indian tribal casinos. The proposed reopening of a 10th casino continues to remain under review by the state. Minimum theoretical payout return percentages are 87% for all non-tribal casinos and 80% for tribal casinos run by the 4 Kansas tribes. The minimum payout return for the tribal casino in Kansas City, owned and operated by the Wyandotte Nation from the state of Oklahoma, if it exists at all, is unclear. In the last year, attempts were made to reopen the Woodlands Greyhound and Horse Racetrack with slot machines. So far, these attempts have been unsuccessful. This former pari-mutuel betting facility and now potential casino has stood empty in Kansas City for over a decade. I've seen photos of this former racetrack, and frankly, it's something of an eyesore. I think some of the past attempts to reopen it have been just so someone would clean it up a little. Its poor condition doesn't just bring down property values for the few houses nearby, it brings down the perceived value of the whole city. That's no good for anyone. Well, maybe it's good for the gaming market across the river in Missouri? Yes? Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Up next is a second state comprising this episode segment, Kentucky Slot Machine Casino Gambling 2018. Here goes. Kentucky slot machine casino gambling is essentially non-existent, as games of chance are strictly illegal in Kentucky. However, competition-based games are legal. Currently, 4 out of Kentucky's 7 pari-mutuel wagering racetracks offer these skill-based electronic gaming machines. Payout return statistics are publicly available for the 5 pari-mutuel wagering facilities in Kentucky, which offer skill-based historic horse races electronic gaming machines. The minimum legal gambling age in Kentucky depends upon the gambling activity. For land-based casinos and poker rooms, it's not available. For bingo, the lottery, and pari-mutuel wagering, it's 18. Kentucky's interpretation of gambling depends on whether or not skill is a prevailing factor in the activity, and that the competitor's level of skill, quote, must sufficiently govern the results, end quote. Therefore, competition-based games are legal, including pari-mutuel wagering, but relevant to our interest as slots enthusiasts, slot machine casino gambling is illegal. However, of interest are 1,720 competition-based electronic games available in a few of their pari-mutuel facilities. These skill-based games are based on historic race results. Historically speaking, Kentucky has had a fascinating relationship with gambling. While casino gambling was never legal, gambling dens were prevalent before the Great Depression of 1929. Much of this open display of gambling was located in Newport, across the Ohio River from Cincinnati, and included an element of organized crime. If ever in Newport, consider walking the historic Newport Gangster Tour. I live in southwestern Ohio, a ways north of Cincinnati. Some of my coworkers from my day job live in Kentucky. Geez, that sounds terrible. Some of my best friends live in Kentucky. Yet they do live in Kentucky, such as, well, my boss. With my being so close, I thought you might like some local information. I didn't grow up here, but as it says on my LinkedIn profile, at this point in time, I've been here about 7 years. You don't typically refer to Newport, Ohio as Newport. That's the name of the town on the Ohio River across the border from Cincinnati, not far down US 52 from Grant's birthplace. No, we identify that area as Newport on the Levee. Why? Because it has a levee. Also an aquarium, a small arts district, the Newport Gangster Tour, restaurants, shops, and one more thing. Bridges. Bridges just for walking as well as paths for walking. It really is something. In the month of March, the March of Dimes has their March for Babies. I enjoy supporting that every year, walking about 6 miles for a few hours through Newport on the Levee and through downtown Cincinnati to end up at Sawyer Point eating brats, burgers, and lots of other vendor-based foods in the park there. What I'm trying to say here, perhaps poorly, is that the historic Newport Gangster Tour isn't the only sight to see. It really is a pleasant area. I especially appreciate all the bridges across the Ohio River. Swing by sometime, you might like it. The casino on the Ohio side is just over on the left. You can't miss it. Just follow the signs. Regarding slot machine private ownership, it is legal to privately own a slot machine in Kentucky. The Kentucky Horse Racing Commission regulates non-charitable gaming, such as electronic gaming machines, at pari-mutuel racetracks in Kentucky. The most recent revenue report is available under Quick Links, titled Wagering Historic Horse Races. In October 2018 report, the following 4 pari-mutuel wagering racetracks are shown to have a total of 2,734 historic horse racing, HHR, electronic gaming machines. Derby City has 900, Ellis Park has 179, Kentucky Downs has 753, and Keeneland and Red Mile combined have 902. There are 8 pari-mutuel wagering horse racetracks in Kentucky. Only half of these sites offer electronic gaming machines. The largest casino in Kentucky is Red Mile Kentucky Harness and Historic Racing in Lexington, having 902 gaming machines. The second largest casino is Kentucky Downs Casino in Franklin, having 753 gaming machines. Those Kentucky pari-mutuel facilities offering skill-based historic horse race electronic gaming machines are, as usual, available on my website blog article for the state at professorslots.com/ky. There are no federally recognized American Indian tribes in Kentucky, and therefore no tribal casinos in this state. As an alternative to enjoying Kentucky slot machine casino gambling, consider exploring casino options in a nearby state. Kentucky is bordered by, to the north, Ohio, to the east, West Virginia, to the southeast, Virginia, to the south, Tennessee, and to the west, Missouri. To visit any of my articles on these U.S. states, simply visit professorslots.com followed by its 2-letter designation. For example, my Ohio Slots article is available at professorslots.com/OH. The most recent month's revenue report from the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission provides sufficient information to determine actual payout return statistics. These return percentages are for the most recent month and fiscal year to date, along with a comparison to the same statistics 1 year ago. For the most recent month of October 2018, the overall payout return percentage is 91.47%. The year-to-date fiscal year payout return percentage is 91.72%. For the 4 pari-mutuel facilities offering these skill-based competition games, the most recent monthly and fiscal year-to-date payout return statistics are available on my website blog article for the state at professorslots.com/ky. The pari-mutuel facility with the highest payout return both monthly and annually was Kentucky Downs. No minimum or maximum theoretical payout return limits for HHR gaming machines are publicly available. In summary, Kentucky slot machine casino gambling exists as competition-based games of skill. Traditional slot machines are illegal. However, 4 out of Kentucky's 7 parimutuel wagering racetracks offer a total of 2,734 skill-based electronic gaming machines. Payout return statistics are publicly available for historic horse races electronic gaming machines at each of these sites. For all sites for October 2018, the monthly payout return percentage was 91.47%. The year-to-date financial year payout return percentage was 91.72%. In the last year, Thunder Ridge Raceway surrendered its gambling license and closed. So far, this available gambling license has not been reassigned to another property. However, the owners of Churchill Downs and Keeneland Racecourse have reportedly expressed interest in additional historic racing facilities. Also in the last year, the owners of Churchill Downs have opened Derby City Gaming to offer a venue with skill-based electronic gaming machines. Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. On the next episode of the Professor Slots podcast, I'll need to once again get caught up with my state-by-state blog articles. It won't be nearly as many states and territories as my podcast episode number 37, where I went over 13 of them. Instead, for next week, I'll be going over as many as 5 of them, including Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, and possibly Michigan. That's about a month's worth of weekly articles. After that, I'll only be out of sync by about 5 state-by-state articles, so I'll likely need to do this one more time to get everything close to real time. I'll likely go over another currently unspecified slots topic in 2 weeks with its 2 states, then cover 5 more state-by-state articles, probably through New Hampshire, in 3 weeks. Yes, I think that'll work. The good news is I'll be able to publish 3 more relatively long, but of course jam-packed with goodness, podcast episodes 4 weeks in a row, including this one. Wouldn't that be nice? To ask a question, which might end up as a blog article or on a podcast episode, email it to john@professorslots.com, where John is spelled Jon, or by calling 937-696-0086 to leave a 3-minute or less voicemail. Casino trip reports about slots are also appreciated. That's the end of another great episode of the Professor Slots podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Show notes for this episode are now available within most podcast apps, but are also available on my website at professorslots.com/E47. I plan to have the next episode come out very soon for you, where I'll have more amazing content for the show. Until the next episode, have fun, be safe, and make good choices. Bye.